it is my pleasure to introduce to you guys our guest speaker. She's not really a guest, one of our very own, Miss Melody Brooke. Melody is a marriage and family counselor, an author, a filmmaker, a lifelong student of New Thought, and an experiential learning teacher. With over 30 years of helping clients, this has taught her that we all have the capacity to be more of who we are. She is here today to share what she has discovered about how to open yourself up to being more fully you. Her workshop this afternoon will take you deeper into that process, remove any blocks to being who you are called to be. Now remember, this is experiential, so you want to do some work, right? It's not a lecture, it's a workshop. And she tells us that you will have a life-changing experience this afternoon. So will you guys join me in welcoming Melody Brooke.
I can't tell you how surprised I am to be here. I came here for the first time when I was probably 20, 21 years old when Donald Curtis was speaking. So it's kind of overwhelming to be on the same stage that Donald was on. And there's a part of me that's so surprised, but there's another part of me who knows this is where I was meant to be. When I was 9 years old, my family didn't really go to church, so I didn't really understand what this whole God thing was all about. And my girlfriends, my kids at school were all going to church and going to Sunday school and talking about God, and I was like, I don't know what that is. So I turned to my mother one day and I said, what are we? She says, oh, we're Methodist. Great. So I went to the Methodist church by myself, 9 years old, walked across the street, and started going to church by myself. My question was, what is God? What is this God thing? What is that? So even after going for a few years, I still didn't really get it. Finally, I read the New Testament. Remember the Good News Bible? How many of y'all read that one? Yeah. So that was what I read at 13 years old, and I had nobody to interpret it for me, so I just basically went from what my 12, 13-year-old self could make sense of. And what I walked away with is, God is love. We are all the sons and daughters, children of God, which means that we are, like God, love. And we have the capacity to be creative, and we have the capacity to be in and express love. So I started learning about New Thought. Somebody gave me psycho-cybernetics. Somebody gave me the power of positive thinking. Those things were, put on top of my awarenesses at that time. I was 12, 13, 14 years old. And I was at a slumber party. Imagine this. This is where I get my calling. I'm at a slumber party. Not where you'd expect that to happen. I was in prayer as I was falling asleep one night. And I said, okay, why am I here? Because there was so much happening at that time. There was the drug epidemics were starting to happen, and the Vietnam War and integration and all the fights about that. And I saw the world as a really tumultuous place, and I didn't know where I fit. So I went to sleep with this prayer of, who am I? Why am I here? What am I supposed to do to be of service to you, God? And I had this message from God that said, you are a minister of love. Well, that rather surprised me at the time because I was 13 years old and I didn't know any female ministers. I was like, how does that happen? So I was a little confused by that, but I said, okay, I'll take that. Be careful what mission you accept. Because the minute you accept that mission, the challenges to that mission appear. And the things that you need to learn to understand what that mission is appear. So by the time I was 15, my world got rocked, the rug got pulled out from under me, and my experience of love kind of went away because my mom had a nervous breakdown. She was my connection to feeling loved, and she was, while physically here, emotionally, psychologically not here. So I felt completely abandoned and the loss of love at that time. So I spent a lot of years, like a lot of people in the 70s, late 60s, early 70s, exploring all the different ways to not feel. There were plenty of them available, drugs, alcohol being some of the main ones. And then I found myself married to somebody who certainly did not provide me the opportunity to feel loved. And I had a baby, which I did feel loved there. That was awesome. But then I went ahead and remarried somebody else who also didn't give me the experience of love. Again, once again, learning what love was not. I spent 50 years learning what love is not, by the way. And what it is. And so during that process of my second marriage and not feeling loved and seeing lots of ways in which I was not expressing love with my own children, I had another moment where I was spoken to by God, and that was after my son died from sudden infant death when I was 32 years old. Again, I was questioning, why am I here? What is this about? What am I was off in a little house on a prairie, literally, with no water, no running water, no heat, no air conditioning, on a prairie outside of Dallas, and I did not know why I was here. I was really struggling. And somebody suggested to me that since I already had a bachelor's degree, I should get a master's degree, so I started looking at college catalogs and trying to figure out what I should get as a master's program, and I was considering advertising and theater and just all kinds of things, and just none of them quite made sense to me. So one day I'm standing in the bathroom brushing my hair, and all of a sudden God taps me on the shoulder and goes, "You're a counselor, remember?" I went, "Oh, that's right." And I walked out of the bathroom and told my husband that I'm a counselor. And he was like, "What? Where did that come from?" So the next 30 years I spent learning from other people what love is not. Understanding how not experiencing love as a child and feeling abandoned and unloved affects people on such a core level. And seeing things and hearing stories of things that are beyond what any of you in this room hopefully have ever even imagined. It's stuff of nightmares, because I ended up working with dissociative identity disorder, also known as multiple personality disorder clients. And I heard stories that would make your skin crawl. And in listening to those stories, at the essence of who they were, I started seeing things a little differently. For one thing, back in the 90s, you remember dysfunctional families? Remember how everybody was talking about dysfunctional families? Well, that's how I understood our problems in this world to be, based on dysfunctional families. Well, in listening to these stories and understanding the way that the internal systems of these people who have multiple personalities work, I started understanding that all of us have the same systems that happen within us and outside of us in our relationships, because I was also working with individuals and couples who were not dissociative. And I got to see how that was all working in so many different ways. And it dawned on me one day that this is not about dysfunctional families. This is about how our brains work. Our brains work this way. Okay, so this is a model of your brain. This is the brain stem. People refer to that as the lizard brain. And that part of our brain is where our fight, flight, freeze, automatic survival reflex lives. And then we have, it also is the first part of our brain to develop in utero, so it's very primitive. And then we have our midbrain, which is called the mammalian brain. It's the part of our brain where our emotional centers are. It's why we love our dogs and cats so much, because they're pure emotion, right? So we have this emotional center. And then we have our new brain, which developed last, which is where our logical thought is, our problem-solving skills are, our language skills are, and where we do our affirmations from, and where we do our new thought practices from is all up here. But what happens when somebody's screaming at you? Or when somebody cuts you off in traffic? Or you listen to the wrong thing on the news? What happens is this old brain fires off. We're flooded with those stress hormones, which flood our midbrain with those emotions, and our new brain shuts down. We no longer have access to all that great, wonderful thought that we normally have. So when that happens, we feel like a victim or potential victim, and it's horrible. It is not fun. We feel trapped, we feel overwhelmed, we feel confused, helpless, hopeless, afraid, awful feelings that most of us don't like to stay there, right? So we'll try to figure out a way out. There are some people that choose to stay in victim mode. I'm sure you know some people like that, but nobody here. But most of us will try to come out of that in one way or another. So what I have learned is that this old brain is very, very primitive, right? So it doesn't problem solve on big levels, so it just comes up with two solutions. One is you respond as a rescuer, which is to please, placate, lie, sweep everything under the rug, try to get a sense of power and control again by making everybody around us happy again. Because this old brain doesn't like feeling out of control. That's the real trigger there, is that feeling of being out of control. And when we feel out of control, we have to get back in control somehow. It's a compulsion that we have. We are all addicted to control. So we're compulsed to move into that rescue mode, take care of everybody else, fix everybody else's problems so that we can feel okay again. Then, the other thing that we do is flip into self-protect mode. And in self-protect mode, what we do is we try to yell, scream, women are particularly good at throwing a lot of words at the situation to try to get control and power again over it through basically physically or verbally getting power over the situation. We can also throw up a wall and just walk behind the wall, shut everybody out. That's self-protection. That's all the old brain knows. Victim, rescue, self-protect. And just in case you rescuers are feeling a little bit, high and mighty, the truth is that we can only sweep things under the rug for so long. Eventually, they will blow up, and we will end up being self-protect. We will end up doing that in spite of ourselves. So what I learned is that sort of animal reaction that we have is what stops us from being able to fully experience and express love. And I had plenty of opportunities within my marriages to go through that process. Trust me. And I often was stuck in a sense of blame, which, by the way, is what drives that whole cycle, is blame. And it can also be self-blame, which I've also been very guilty of moving into shame, which is self-blame. So recognizing that way of our old brain reacting is what prevents us from allowing ourselves to move into and being all of who we truly are and we're meant to be. So one day in my office, somebody said, so what is the opposite of that? And I spent a number of years sort of sorting out what the opposite of that is. And what I learned is the opposite of being in that victim place is to be able to take ownership. To take ownership of our own feelings, our own thoughts, our own desires, and our own value. We can't own what does not belong to us. If somebody else is angry, that's not our responsibility. If somebody else is hurt, that's not our responsibility. It doesn't mean we don't care, but we are not responsible for that. Does that make sense? But also we have to own our own happiness, our own joy, our own life process. That's up to us. It's not up to anybody else to make us happy either, any more than it's our job to make other people happy. Our job is to make us happy. So that's ownership. And then the second piece of that is to move into rescue mode. Respect, which is opposite of rescue mode, right? The opposite of rescue mode is to be in respect. And that is to speak our truth with no intent to harm, nor protect, nor control anyone else. And the opposite of moving into self-protect mode is to provide empathy for yourself and other people, which I must say is very hard when somebody's screaming at you, but it's also really important. And I have to say, in my lifetime, I have slipped many, many times. And I like to joke that, even the Dalai Lama probably struggles with his old brain because he has one too. We all have that. We all have those impulses. When somebody I have been guilty of it. Ask my children, they'll tell you. I have been guilty of flipping into being yelled at and then yelling right back. And then learning to stop myself. and take ownership of my reaction being about me, not about that other person. Their yelling at me didn't make me yell. That was a reaction that I have inside of me. That's what I'm responsible for. That's how I can move into being able to love not only myself, but other people, when I can stop blaming and I can start owning what's my truth and my emotions, my reactions. And learning how to do that, by the way, is not so simple. Because it sounds really good. I mean, these are all ideas we've heard of before, right? We've all heard of empathy and respect and ownership before. We all know these concepts. These are not new concepts. There's a reason why we struggle to go there. We struggle to go there because that old brain is very demanding. It's very insistent that if we don't do things the way it tells us to do them, we're not safe. So we feel anxious. We start to get really uncomfortable. And so we do what's easy and natural rather than doing the better thing. Because it's not easier. It is not easier to practice compassion. Because that old brain, it's a very egocentric thing, right? Its job is to protect the organism. That's what its job is, to protect you, to keep you safe. So it's very egocentric. So I call that the cycle of egocentrism that we get trapped into. And the choice is to begin to move from that into this cycle of compassion so that we can have compassion for ourselves, we can have compassion for others, and start to express ourselves as more loving human beings. Not an easy process. Like I said, when I accepted that mission, I had plenty of opportunities not to experience any of that. And learning how to do that, I started to recognize that the wall of grief that hits when you start to do it differently. Your body, your emotions, your stories will start to block you from allowing yourself to be compassionate because you want to, their stories make us want to blame or they make us want to shame ourselves. And learning how to shift out of that makes us uncomfortable. It's not easy. But I'm here to tell you that each of us has within us that capacity because that old brain, that's not who we are. This is just a part of our mechanism of the way our brains work that helps us survive. We need that in a jungle or in a war zone. We absolutely need that part of our brain, but we do not need it to function in our social environment, which is where we tend to use it, right? So taking ownership means being willing to walk the path of anxiety. People say, well, I thought you said it was going to be better. I'm like, no, not necessarily. Not right off the bat. It does not right off the bat feel better. It only feels better once you've had practice at it, once you've learned to make that shift. And in making that shift, you're going to make mistakes. It's okay. You know, I have caught myself reacting when somebody yelled and my yelling right back, and then go, whoa, wait a second. That's not real. That's my old brain reaction. I want to do something different. And choosing then to say, wow, you seem upset. Can you tell me what's going on? Because the antidote to someone else's yelling at you is to give them empathy. The antidote to going into rescue mode is to be able to say, wow, when you said that, I really felt hurt. And I noticed that I wanted to yell because I was feeling hurt. So owning your truths, being able to provide that empathy, being able to provide that respect is what I'm going to be working on with you this afternoon for any of you that want to join me, taking you deeper into that process of understanding how to make that move and how to begin the practice of being who you were meant to be, which who you were born to be is true love, is just to be the essence of love and to find your path and be able to learn how to listen to your calling. And one of the things that I've learned is that our old brain tends to stay pretty active most of the time. Anybody experience stress? Yeah. That's your old brain. That's your old brain saying, this is dangerous, that's dangerous, this is dangerous, that's dangerous. It can be cutting off in traffic, it can be the news, it can be a bad word from a husband or a daughter or whatever. And you start to feel stressed. Things aren't going the way you think they should be, and we feel our life is in danger, which it's not, but the old brain doesn't know the difference between that and reality. So learning how to settle that old brain can keep, because if our stress level's up here and something happens, we get into a conflict or something happens where we feel threatened, we go way over the top. But we can learn to settle our old brain and keep it down, keep it settled so that we don't react so big when things happen, and we can have a choice then to become more empathetic and open and compassionate. So what I'm going to do this morning is I'm going to take you guys on a really easy way to get mindful. Because it's in that mindful place, too, that you can listen to God's talking to you. Because you have to get your old brain out of the way to be able to hear God's message to you. So I'm going to invite you to close your eyes, put both feet on the floor, take a deep breath and let it out with a sigh. And just notice sounds. If the thought pops into your head, just let it float away on a cloud and come back to noticing sounds. Take another breath. And just notice the weight of your body on the chair and your feet on the floor. And then come back to noticing sounds. Take another breath. And notice the sensation of air on your face, hands, feet. Take a breath and come back to noticing sound. Take a breath and notice the sensation of your clothing on your skin and your shoes on your feet. And come back to noticing the sounds. Notice the sensation of air moving in through your nose, into your chest, belly, and back out again. Notice if you can feel your heartbeat. Notice any other sensation inside your skin. Notice any emotions that might be there. And come back to noticing sound. Then when you're ready, just open your eyes and come back here. So how do you feel right now? A little less stressed? What I have observed with my clients over the years is a lot of times all it takes is learning how to do that very simple sensory awareness to rid yourself of anxiety. I've had people get off of anxiety medications using mindfulness. You can go to the bathroom, close the door, sit on a pot, and just do mindfulness. Close the door in your car and sit and just do mindfulness. It doesn't take but a couple of minutes, but it can transform your life. So when people are telling you to begin a meditation process, sometimes that feels a little overwhelming because it thinks you mean that it feels like you mean you have to turn on candles and turn on meditation music and sit for half an hour not thinking. But no, this is a very simple way just to allow yourself to go mindful and be open and hear God talk to you, or just let all the stress leave your body. So thank you very much. I'm so glad that you were here today. I appreciate this opportunity more than you can imagine. And I am going to be doing a workshop this afternoon. Also going to be doing a workshop for interplay, which is another way of getting connected with yourself through joyful play. And I have books available. I've got a table out with my books on them, and I'd love to talk to you more about it then. Thank you.